This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So the family that the Parkland school shooter was staying with appeared on Good Morning America this morning.
Yeah.
And they paint a very different picture of the school shooter than a lot of other people did, including those that tipped off the FBI.
Well, they're called Kimberly and they're the Sneed family, and their son, who goes to that high school, was senior there, wasn't shot, but was friends with Cruz. So they took him in after his mother died. They said he followed the rules, and they enrolled him in an alternative high school so that he could get his GED. They got him a job at the Dollar Tree. And on Valentine's Day, apparently he didn't want to go to school.
The thing that was maybe different was that he didn't go to school. He usually drives him to school with him in the morning. He didn't go that particular morning, which sometimes happens. And
he said he didn't go to school on Valentine's Day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They said that he was texting their son up until like about 10 minutes before the shooting.
I tried to reserve myself. I was really Nick.
And he was friends with your son.
Yes, sir.
Right.
How's your son holding up?
He's angry. He's angry. He's betrayed. He's he's upset.
Furious.
He was at that school too, and he had friends at that school.
And he was at school that day, James. And I know Nicholas texted your son.
Yes, sir.
What were those texts like?
He told my son he was going to the movies, and he said he had something to tell him. And my son pressed him, what is it? What is it? He goes, nothing bad, bro. And he goes, and that was it. And then he said he was going to the movies. And then the last text my son got was, yo. And that was it. And that was about 2:18, I believe.
Do you have any idea why you think he texted your son?
No idea. No.
Yeah, the question, though, for them is, what did they know about the shooter's mental health state, background? Apparently,
they didn't know about his social media postings.
Well,
that's what they told Good Morning.
Well, there seems like he deteriorated after his adopted mom's death late last year, and so it would be interesting to get more detail on what they saw in terms of his behavior, whether or not they were paying attention to social media, which they probably should have been. Clearly, in retrospect, they should have been, but just as a general rule, I mean, you pay attention to your boy's social media, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh, I mean, and
but they suggest that they didn't see anything that was concerning to them.
They weren't aware. They knew that he had some mental health issues. They were not aware of his social media. They said that they locked his guns in a safe, and they thought they were the only ones with a key.
And also, you know what would also be interesting, since he was working at the dollar store, it'd be interesting to hear from his employer.
No, he spoke. I listened to that interview, and he said nothing. He was very shocked. He said, I had no idea that he showed up for work all the time, on time, did his job diligently, and then left. And his boss said he did not see that coming and was shocked to learn that it was him.
Well, I mean, let's not forget, his mental health challenges notwithstanding, this is somebody who planned and orchestrated that atrocity.
And then put down his weapon and blended in with the students to escape. I mean, that's
part of the planning.
Part of the plan,
yeah. To get perspective on this, the last time I saw this gentleman, actually, he was living out in Kane County Way. He's involved in Republican Party politics out here, but his job took him to successes outside of Illinois, something I hope to say one day. And that includes a stop at Newtown, Connecticut, where he was a school board member when that horrific shooting at Sandy Hook happened. He is Cody McCubbin. He joins us now. Cody, good to catch up with you again. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, nice talking to you. It's been a long time.
It has been, and you reached out to me. I knew you. I kind of had lost track of you, and I didn't know that you had been on the school board during the massacre in Newtown. Tell us what that was like, what you learned from having to go through that horrific situation that may be applicable to what people similarly situated to you in Parkland, Florida are going through.
Wow. Yeah, it's there's no way to describe what these people are going through. I mean, basically, they're having a massive amount of people coming just descending on their town right now. I mean, going all the way from the media to just, individuals who just want to be there. And they're having to deal with all this. And it just becomes a circus. And we found out when we were in Newtown, basically, no offense, I know you're part of the media, but I mean, it becomes a real big problem because they start trying to get into every crevice and every little area within the town. I mean, there was one time that, just as an example, when we were having counseling sessions with teachers who had been in the school because the federal government was actually nice enough to bring us some psychologists that have training in these kind of post-traumatic syndrome types of situations. And we had, guys from the media just trying to beat down the door and trying to get in. I mean, there's no way I can describe how, because you're just constantly being inundated. People are calling, offering just kind of ridiculous kind of solutions that somehow they think they know better. I could go on and on for weeks. I mean, it's literally the lottery that nobody wants to win.
And your form of healing, wasn't it to tear down the school and build a whole completely new school?
There's a lot to that. I mean, the school was, at the time we tore it down because it was very old. I mean, it was built back in the 60s and, early 60s. So it was really kind of a cost benefit analysis that we had to do. It's like, okay, we're going to have to do something about the area where this happened, or is it just going to be more effective just to tear down the school? Now, once they did that, the state actually put in a bunch of new rules demanding that certain schools had to be built in a certain way. So you had to have double, triple accesses into the front door where you can't get in bulletproof glass to even get through. Because remember, when Adam Lanza came in, all he did is just shoot through the glass and walk through. Mm-hmm. Because no amount of alarms or forewarning could have actually prevented this guy from doing what he was doing. I mean, and to think that somebody would do this to an elementary was unheard of. I mean, if I had to be the most, try to forewarn or look forward into an event like this, I would have thought, okay, the high school, that makes sense. That happened in Columbine. That becomes, that's something that you can make a logical conclusion to. But when something like this happened to the elementary, it was just completely just out of nowhere.
No, it was right. It was unfathomable. I mean, the interestingly though, they've already talked about they're going to raise the area at that school in Parkland where the shooting happened. So they're moving quickly. And the same thing happened. Well, they wanted to do the same thing at NIU.
Right.
Yeah.
But they had
that
to
hall
close for
shooting.
a few years, and then they reopened it.
And so, I mean, I know it's reliving, it's going through that process, but. And you hear all these ideas, and obviously, as you said, you've got the media descending on you. And I remember parents in Newtown saying, please get out of here and leave us alone and leave us to cope with this. I distinctly remember that. So it's you refresh my recollection now. But what about the school board and the responsibility that you guys have, that they have, particularly down in Parkland now, where you've got an individual, the shooter, who had been expelled, who had run-ins with teachers now talking about it, the teachers who tried to get to him and so on and so forth. How did you guys in Newtown process that the way that they're trying to process it in Parkland?
Well, I mean, it really comes down to a kind of a method of discovery, right? So, all the medical records and everything are sealed, right, because they have rules and everything like that. I mean, I do remember when I was in Newtown when they pulled the file. Now, I didn't look at it. But when they pulled the file on Adam Lanza, because he was a student there for a short period of time, but it had been as thick as a book. So so you knew, but see, you have to remember, in Newtown we had a kind of a different situation. I mean, this guy was an active student there. Adam Lanza hadn't been a student in Newtown for a decade, if not longer.
Right.
So when he literally came out of the shadows. And the thing that I've told people, when they ask me about this is that, just like Adam Lanza and this kid and just like, Columbine, all these other issues, they hate the school. They don't know these kids. They have no idea. all these people that they acted out against, he has no idea who they are. All of them are. I mean, just like Adam Lanza didn't know who these kids were. He had no clue. For whatever reason, he has some kind of just hate towards the school that where he had to just, be vindicated in some way, shape, or form. I mean, it's kind of hard to explain, but I mean, it's just, it gets down to the point it's these kids have some very serious mental issues, and obviously, he, like this kid Cruz, was able to hide it very well.
Were there
people he was around? Just your segment earlier.
Were there any other changes that were made in Newtown other than the actual school construction and making it more of a hardened school? Making it more secure. Any changes in the way that the school operates, the district operates?
Not really. I mean, there's really nothing you can do. I mean, the thing is that, I mean, really, you can brief up the school. I think it made the parents and everybody feel a lot better that their kids were going to school, because remember, we had to build it on the same site. Yeah. We couldn't find another location to build it. So because just the way if you ever look at the topography of Connecticut, it's very difficult to find good flat land. Mm-hmm. We built the school, and then we even had to get $50 million from the state of Connecticut in order to be able to even afford it. But really, and I resigned probably because I moved to the UK. I moved to London in 2013. But so I wasn't really there afterwards to see how things changed. But when I moved back, things were pretty much the same. But then, one point I would have to say, after all this ends, what comes is there's going to end up being a lot of infighting, right? So people who have certain ideas of how things should be, and people who are in kind of positions of decision making where, they have to take the reality of what can be done and what can't be done. It really throws everything in a complete kind of upheaval. Because what you see is kind of a normal day-to-day kind of like activity, then, you're always referring back to that date. And we did that even at Newtown. I mean, it's always in the back of everybody's head.
Did you?
It'll take decades.
Did you have a child in the school when that happened? The shooting happened?
Yeah, not in Sandy Hook, but he was in first grade, but the next school over. Oh. And actually, if it's so close, I mean, if we had actually just moved a little bit further north of where we lived, my son would have been in those classrooms. And that's how close we came. So, and plus I was on the board and everything else, and having to deal with all that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, Cody McCubbin, a former Newtown, Connecticut school board member, was there when that horrific shooting at Sandy Hook happened. Cody, good to catch up with you. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing your very difficult experience during your time in Connecticut.
Thanks, Sam. I'll see you.
Thanks.
Yeah, and Cody joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.